Hell yeah, what is going on, everybody? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's your boy DKEN, and welcome to my incredible podcast. Now, before we commence this episode, do not forget to Hulk smash that like button, subscribe to my fat ass channel, share this with your boys and your fat ass families, follow me on Instagram, smash that bell notification button, and of course, as always, please sit back and enjoy. Now let's get started. Our top story for today shall be: the feminists must stop inventing such retarded ass terminologies. Now, in this episode, the part that is difficult for me is this: where do I start? The reason I'm asking this question is because the feminists have came up with such stupid ass terminologies to the point where I am faced with all sorts of unreasonable challenges. As we all know very well, the feminists will do everything that they can to spread their man-hating concepts and install them into society. Now, with that said, I'm going to start by addressing one terminology at a time, and we will progress from there. Let's get started. The first word that we will go over is manspreading. Now, for those of you that do not know what this is, I will define it for you in order to make sure that we are all on the same page. Matter of fact, I will put up Google's definition on the screen right now. It says that manspreading is, and I quote, "the practice whereby a man, especially one traveling on public transportation, adopts a sitting position with his legs wide apart in such a way as to encroach on an adjacent seat or seats." So in plain English, it's when a guy spreads his legs so wide he can almost take up two seats. Simple as that. Now, I cannot count the number of times that I have heard feminists use this word to the extent where they sound like a broken record, and that goes for the other terminologies that they have been using for a long time. So folks, let me present to you an article titled "Manspreading Can Get You Arrested" by Jessica Roy. Keep in mind, this article came out quite a long time ago, specifically back in May 28th of 2015. I'm going to read the key details of this article so that you can be well informed about how the feminists were operating. Here we go. It says, and I quote, "The NYPD has found a broken windows crime, and it's being a man and taking up too much room on the subway. The feminists win again." Now keep in mind, the part where it says the NYPD found a broken window crime, straight to the point, the broken window theory was created by James Q. Wilson and George Kelling back in 1982, and the theory was used to predict and detect signs of crime, antisocial behaviors, and civil disorder. And if you mix all of that together, what you get is an atmosphere of people that will be encouraged to commit crimes. Even though this has nothing to do with feminism, if any of you are interested, I will count this as a source, and I'll leave a link on the description box below this video if you want to dive into the overview of this theory. Now, let's try our best not to get sidetracked, and let's maximize our concentration on what the author just said. The author, Jessica, claimed that a man who spreads his legs while using any form of public transportation somehow magically falls under the category of the broken window theory. She no shit believes that if one guy spreads his legs while using the bus or train, others will adopt that same act, and somehow that makes those guys the enemy. So right off the bat, this does raise several questions. Is there such thing as female spreading or woman spreading? Here's the answer. Survey says, nope. Let's say the men's rights activists came forward and said to the New York State legislation, "Hey, we just came up with a terminology of our own. It's called female spreading. This is where a female uses any form of transportation, takes a seat, and places one of her legs over the other so that she could take up as much space as humanly possible in front of her. Not on the seats, but in front of her. And we would like to update New York State laws by putting this invention into our books." Now here's my question, folks. Do you think the legislation is going to approve something like that? Nope. Personally, I don't think so, because of the simple fact that New York City is considered a left-wing dominant city. So What that means is all of these leftist movements like Me Too, the feminist movement, the transgender movement, and more are going to dominate the city and have more control over the city than the right-wingers. So, as you can see, the New York State legislature seems to be quite lenient towards these left-wing movements, and they would have the audacity to put the term manspreading in their laws. And by the way, I almost forgot. Let's go back one more time to the article, Manspreading Can Get You Arrested. It also says, and I quote, Gothamist writes that according to a new police reform organizing project report, on a recent visit to the arraignment part in Brooklyn's criminal court, prop volunteers observed that police officers had arrested 2 Latino men on the charge of manspreading on the subway, presumably because they were taking up more than one seat and therefore inconveniencing other riders. Before issuing an adjournment contemplating dismissal for both men, the judge expressed her skepticism about the charge because of the time of the arrests, 12:11 a.m. I can't believe there were many people on the subway. So keep this in mind. It's against the MTA's code of conduct where you are occupying more than one seat, but the reason that I found this to be questionable was because of the way the judge handled it. She was concentrating on the time of the arrest, which was at midnight, specifically 12:11 a.m., and she said, I can't believe there were many people on the subway. Let's move on to the next article titled, New York should ban manspreading like Spain did, but they probably can't, by Bonnie Alzulay. I hope I pronounced that name right. Now, this article came out 3 years later, specifically back in December 19 of 2018. And there's a reason why this author brought up Spain in terms of manspreading. So let's dive right into the key details. It says, and I quote, New York City's MTA is cause for countless pet peeves, whether it's their slow-moving F-line, delays due to train traffic, construction derailments, unnecessary PDA, or the smell of McDonald's on a sticky summer day. The list can go on forever. But there's one affront that I simply can't wrap my head around, or leg around if we're being technical. I'm here to address the elephant in the room, if you will, and deep dive into an investigation on my greatest public transportation hang-up. The act of manspreading. Mansplaining's equally obnoxious cousin. Listen, for those of you that either lived in NYC for a long time, and for those of you that visited NYC at some time in your life, we all know how disgusting and unstructured the subway stations and the buses are. However, and I will make this next statement perfectly clear as crystal rain, it's absolutely easy for people that belong in the left to lift up their fingers, point their fingers at the men, and say that men are the problem because they're spreading their legs like prostitutes when they're using the subway or the buses. I shall go ahead and give them a buzzer for that. And it doesn't matter too much as to which train you're using, whether if it's the 7 train, the N train, the W train, the E train, the A train, the 4, 5, or 6 train, it doesn't matter. Here's a quick piece of advice, and this is for those of you that are currently living in NYC. If you are using any form of commute, i.e. the train, the bus, the ferry is for those of you that live in Staten Island and you need to get to Manhattan. If you ever see a feminist or any other kind of left-wing activist in the same bus, train, or ferry that you are on in that moment, avoid those people at all costs and do not approach them under any fucking circumstances. Keep all of that in mind as we progress in this article. Let's continue on. It also says, and I quote, I'm sure you've seen this before. Man steps onto the train and sits down with his legs spread wide, taking up not 1, but 2 empty spaces on the train that could easily be filled by other train goers. One small spread for man is one giant spread for all humankind. And by humankind, I mean fellow passengers, am I right? Even the Oxford Dictionary has referred to it as an encroachment, defining manspreading as the practice whereby a man adopts a sitting position with his legs wide apart in such a way as to encroach on an adjacent seat. Something clearly has to be done, but before I go on about the nuisance and inconsideration of this hypermasculine performance, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the science behind it all. Why do men feel the need to sprawl out their legs and make themselves at home like they're sitting on their mom's living room sofa? Let's go over that again before we move on to the next terminology. It said, one small spread for man is one giant step for all humankind. So what the author of this article is suggesting is that it's perfectly fine for a female to put one leg over her other leg, taking up space in front of her instead of beside her, and that's normal. So that's acceptable, but when a man opens his legs, that's not okay to you. Before I forget, and before I move on to the next terminology, I would like to present to you another article in regards to manspreading titled, Manspreading Chair Wins Award for Forcing Dudes' Legs Together by Christopher Cameron. Now this article came out back in July 19 of 2019, when these leftist morons were taking the lead, of course. Let's skim through this article very quick. It says, and I quote, "Take a pew, sitting down just got woke. A British student has snagged a nifty design award for creating an anti-manspreading chair. Fed up with men who luxuriate in their seating, University of Brighton student Layla Laurel, 23, fashioned a pair of his and hers chairs that challenge the way men and women command space." I was also hugely inspired by Laura Bates' Everyday Sexism Project, where I read about the struggles and frustrations of women around the world pertaining to men infringing on their space. Laurel tells Metro, reminiscent of medieval torture devices translated through mid-century style, the sycamore and cherry wood chairs encourage women to spread eagle while forcing men to knock their knees together. In order to achieve gender equality, it is imperative to consider many different aspects of sexism, says Laurel, and so that is why I thought it would be interesting to try to explore political gendered issues around seating. For her manhood-crushing efforts, Laurel was awarded the Belmont Award at New Designs in London. See that, folks? This is why I do my utmost best to avoid democratic dominant cities like New York City, LA, Chicago, Philly, San Francisco, Seattle. Like, the list can go down for miles. This is why I avoid leftist cities like the ones I've mentioned, because the legislature of these cities are more than willing to bend over and take it up the ass like the beta bitches that they are, because they realized how venomous these movements are. These feminists, the Me Too activists, members of the transgender movement, like, they are all not looking for equality. Just like Coach Greg Adams said, all of these leftist movements, especially the feminist movement, they all want to get equal rights for females at the expense of men. By the way, considering that I used one of his definitions, I shall put this down as a source on the description box below this video. The source is www.gregadams1.com/dictionary. He has the definitions of all sorts of words in this website, and I used his definition that came from one of his books, De-Evolution. Feel free to check out his book. Getting back to the main point, to the female that won this Belmont Award for her invention of her pair of chairs, I believe that what we need to do is invent products that allow men to unite. And by doing this, we can literally counterattack against these leftist movements. One idea that I had in mind, and I am certain that I am not the first man on the planet that has come up with this idea, we should invent chairs that allow men to have the freedom to spread their legs wide open whenever they please. Just make the base of the chair bigger and wider, and that way, that gives the man more space and explore the space, just like Christopher Walken said in that old SNL skit.
I mean, really, yeah, explore the space.
Now let's move on to the next terminology, mansplaining. Let's use Google's definition. It says, and I quote, "the explanation of something by a man, typically to a woman, in a manner regarded as condescending or patronizing." Now, I wanted to use this original video titled, "Is Mansplaining Real? Hugh Man on the Street" by Ali Kokesh. But that video got taken down, so here's what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we shall review this video through Birdman. Now, he reviewed this video back in March 11 of 2017, and I believe that he did a fantastic interpretation of her video. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. Here we go.
Do you think mansplaining is a real thing?
Mansplaining?
Man what? Plaining?
Like explaining manhood? Manscaping or what is that?
Notice how your typical guy has never heard of that word before. Their reactions tell you everything you need to know. So to answer her question,
Nope.
Nope, it's not a real thing. Let's proceed.
I knew what mansplaining was, and I was pretty certain they knew it too. I just had to get them talking long enough to prove it.
Well, we're only a few minutes in, and what I find to be very intriguing is the simple fact that this video got taken down a long time ago because YouTube finally realized how much of a parasite you are, and I'm glad that they knew it. Well, anyways, let's continue.
Do you ever interrupt people when they're trying to tell an anecdote or something like that?
Not at all.
You never interrupt people?
No.
Well, I don't ever do that. I've learned to keep quiet, so my opinions stay here and don't reach this part.
Okay, I have to stop you right there and ask you this. Like, what kind of beta male shit was that? You learned to keep quiet. Like, matter of fact, if all of you look at this guy, I promise you at least one of you would say that this is your typical beta male society supporter of the left, and just look at her reaction when he said that cuck-ass bullshit. Like, right away, she realized how much of a beta male pussy he was. So, you know what? I'm not surprised. Anyways, let's continue.
Have you ever been interrupted by a guy?
All the time. By my husband, mostly.
In my family, most of the time. My dad maybe interrupts me and says no.
Well, that sounds like a typical question that a feminist would ask to any random bystander in a left-wing dominant city, especially in NYC. So here's my point. How about you follow up with this question? Have you ever been interrupted by a female? Because I don't know about any of you guys out there, but I have. Many times I've been interrupted by a female. Besides, we live in a matriarch dominant society, and I promise you, you can expect that anywhere at any time. And to the females that got interrupted by guys, I don't blame those guys because you probably said something fucking stupid. Let's resume.
It made me wonder, what was this man thing inside their heads?
Oh, I don't know. That part of the man's head is perhaps known as the brain, you know, the mind, which is something that the feminists seem to lack a lot.
I wanted to crack one open like an egg, but my producer, who is a man, told me no.
In order for a female to crack a man's mind open like an egg, she would literally have to perform some sort of magical witchcraft type of operation onto this guy, like an exorcism, if you will, in order to accomplish that. And by the way, I need to play Birdman's reaction to her statement. Check this out.
I wanted to crack one open, but my producer said no. Your producer should have said no to you posting this video on the internet because now everyone knows how fucking stupid you are.
Or how about this one? This made me wonder, what was this female thing inside of the feminist narrator's head? Gotcha. Anyway, let's continue.
I mean, maybe sometimes women talk for too long. That's it.
Talk for too long?
I mean, we can kind of explain the same thing, but twice as fast.
Believe it or not, it's true, because the more you simplify your statement, the quicker people will understand. Moving on.
If you know that you're being a misogynistic person, then you can at least know how to change it. But if you don't realize that what you are doing is
naive,
demeaning to people, then
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to play this one more time, and this time I want you to watch very fucking carefully. Let's roll the clip one more time.
if you know that you're being a misogynistic person, then you can at least know how to change it. But if you don't realize that what you are doing is
naive,
demeaning to people, then
Yo, I know this feminist did not just interrupt this guy while he's... Yo, listen.
Nope. Nope.
All of you saw what she just did, right? She just woman-splained, or should I say female-splained. You listen, I cannot make this shit up. So, to put it plain and simply, society thinks that it's okay for females to interrupt a guy when he's speaking, but when a guy tries to get his point across, they're going to interpret that as interrupting a female when she's talking, and ooh, that makes him the bad guy. Cancel him, crucify him. You know what? I think I have reached my point of absolute exhaustion. So let's get some main point across. 1. Stop inventing such retarded ass terminologies that are designed to shame men in all directions, because what you're doing is you are taking the word man, putting it in the beginning of a word, and by doing that, y'all feminists invent a word that nobody has ever heard of, and y'all think that word has some sort of meaning. Stop doing that. 2, to the female that won that bullshit award due to her creation of her chairs that are designed to teach men to close their legs all the way, I hope you get hit by a car and then die at the hospital. I don't care if another female comes forward and takes your place and carries on with your creation. I honestly don't care. 3, gentlemen, if you have ever been shamed and or if you are still faced with all sorts of people that are shaming you, stop being afraid of taking a stand. Give these haters your middle finger, because these leftist morons are not even worth a spit or even a second of your time. Keep this in mind. These movements of the left always try to find something to nitpick about and bitch and complain about it. So our job is to demonstrate to them how fucking stupid and how retarded they are. Take their hypocrisies and use that as a tool to defend yourselves. So with all of that said, this concludes this episode of my incredible podcast. So thank you very much for watching. Do not forget to Hulk smash that like button. Subscribe to my fat ass channel. Share this with your boys and your families. Follow me on Instagram. Smash that bell notification button. And every single one of you, have a wonderful and blessed day. Peace out.